I'd like to call the MPO Policy Committee meeting to order. We'll start with introductions, and we'll start with to my left.
John Kennedy from the CAC.
Judy Madeira, Monroe County Commissioners.
Dan Swafford, Town of Ellisville.
Hope East Osberg, Bloomington Common Council.
Lisa Ridge, Monroe County Highway Department.
David Hiddle, proxy for Mayor Thompson.
Scott Ferris, Monroe County Plan Commission.
Hi, everyone. Jillian Kinsey from the Bloomington Plan Commission.
Chris Wallman with NDOT.
Nate Nichols, City of Bloomington Public Works Department, and I'm the proxy for Director Adam Wason.
Jason Bannock, Indiana University.
Thank you, and I don't think we have anybody online. So the third item is election of calendar year 2025 Policy Committee offers. Would be first for chair, if we have any nominations.
I'll nominate Lisa Ridge for chair.
So we have a nomination and we have a second. Do we have any other nominations? Any public comment? Since we don't have anybody online, do we have to do roll call, or is it okay to do?
You can do consensus.
Okay. All those in favor for Lisa Ridge as chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we are looking for a nomination for vice chair. And looks like we need another chair, Patrick. Hang on just a second. You're fine. And for the record, Doug Horn has joined the committee. So I'll go back to opening it up for nomination for vice chair.
All right, I'm going to put forward a nomination for John Kennedy for vice chair.
Will you accept that nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other nominate? I would need a second on that.
Second.
So we have a second. Do we have any other nominations on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor for Mr. Kennedy to be vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, congratulations. This will be my only meeting I attend. No, just kidding. So moving on to approval of minutes for November 8th, 2024.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes for November 8th, 2024, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, communications from the chair and vice chair. I don't really have much to say. Welcome to 2025. Seems like forever since we've been in here. So looking forward to another year with the MPO Policy Committee and all of the members, and welcome to the new members. Vice Chair?
Thank you. I guess I became vice chair immediately. I've been the representative from the Citizen Advisory Committee. This year, Sarah Ryderbrand has stepped down as chair of the committee, but she's still a member of it. And I was elected chair of the CAC, and Sam Tobin Hochstedt is now vice chair of the CAC. And at our last meeting, we recommended that the Policy Committee approve all of the action items I think that we have on today's agenda.
All right, thank you. And I do want to thank Sarah for all the years that she has helped serve on this committee. She was the vice chair the last couple of years with me. She was a great asset to the board and the CAC, always had good ideas, good comments, and she was a pleasure to work with, and I wish her well at as the health director. Reports from any officers and/or committees, that would be CAC. I believe we just had that they voted to approve all the amendments that are presented today. TAC?
Brad, a brief update. TAC last met on January 29th, and we also recommended approval of the action items we have before us here today. And in other news from the TAC, I was approved as chairman for 2025, and our vice chair is John Baton from Monroe County GIS. So looking forward to working with John this year, and that's the updates from the TAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Reports from the MPO staff. 2025 meeting calendar is the first item.
Did you do a vote for approval of meeting agenda?
And no, I did not. Totally skipped that over. I apologize. So I'm going to go back to item 2 that I missed. Thanks, Katie. Approval of the meeting agenda as presented. I would need a motion for that.
Motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the meeting agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I'll go back to the calendar. Or you want to do?
Sure.
Why don't you do the calendar?
Sure. Attached to the packet is the calendar year 2025 meeting calendar. This is also in the form of a Google Calendar meeting invite that I believe I have invited you to. If you don't want it, feel free to delete it and depend on the emails. But I do change the invite to say canceled before the title if a meeting is canceled. The only change on this calendar from the regular pattern is Thanksgiving week has been, oh, nope, that doesn't apply to this committee. Never mind, just the other two. Next item. Oops. Having problems with my,
MPO 101.
sorry. The scrolling is having problems. Also attached to the packet is a slideshow deck of MPO 101 information. This goes through a lot of information, so please look this over. We won't be presenting it today, but if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask.
Okay. Next item we have from the staff update is the fiscal year 2026-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. We went through a public review of that with comments in November and in December. We received review comments from the Indiana Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration. We've addressed all of those comments, and normally we would have brought it to today's meeting, but with the priority of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we held that off until next month. So we will bring that to you in a final form to the, well, first we'll go to the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee at the end of this month, and then we'll bring that to you in final form for approval on March 14th. The Unified Planning Work Program, this is our contract, our planning contract with the Indiana Department of Transportation using Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration funding. We also had a public review of that in November and December, and we received our review comments from those agencies. We've addressed all of those comments. That will come to the TAC and the CAC again at the end of this month, and then that will come to you in a final form next month. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on any of the staff report items.
So moving on to new business, 2024 to 2028 TIP amendments.
Okay, we have 4 TIP amendments today. The first is the addition of a new Monroe County project. This is a high-friction surface treatment for, I believe, 4 locations along Fairfax Road. Attached in the packet, there is a table of what the funding looks like. This project is newly added as a result of Highway Safety Improvement Program money that was awarded to the county in December of '24. The funds have to be used within 2 years. And let me just go ahead and share this map here. So, actually, I think it's 4 locations. Lisa can speak more to this project if she wants to. No? Okay. The next TIP amendment Sorry, I need to get out of full screen. Okay. The next TIP amendment is an NDOT addition of a new project. It's soil repair on MSE failures. You can see the funding table here. And the location is at the I-69 SR-37 interchange. This project is just fiscal year '26. The third amendment is to fund an existing project that has already been part of the TIP, but because of the Highway Safety Improvement Program money that was awarded to this project in December of '24, it was able to move up in its timeline. So this is for the Downtown Curb Ramps Phase 4 project for the city of Bloomington. The first table is its current funding, and the next table is its proposed amended funding as a result of the award. The fourth amendment is the addition of a new project. This is an NDOT railroad crossing safety project, the installation of safety equipment, lights, gates, cantilevers, and I didn't write down the number of locations, but on this map, you can see the locations. 3 locations along the railroad northeast of Bloomington. Let's see, this one, and this one. So kind of north and south of New Unionville and at New Unionville. So we are requesting approval of these 4 TIP amendments today. Let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Katie. Questions from the board? Any motion from the board?
I'll motion approval of the 4 TIP amendments. Do I need to indicate DES numbers, or can we just say the 4?
I think so. So we have a motion for approval of the 4 amendments to the TIP. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor for amending the tip for the addition and modifications to these 4 projects, do so by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, final adoption.
2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan represents one of our most important planning documents for the urbanized area. All urbanized areas of greater than 50,000 in the United States are required to develop a Metropolitan Transportation Plan, previously called a long-range transportation plan, and they must have at minimum a 20-year time horizon, looking into a number of specific issues and requirements that is set aside by Congress. The 2050 MTP, we've had that under development for roughly more than a year. We officially began in January of last year with a kickoff. The plan itself was developed with the assistance of Burgess and Nyepel, Foursquare ITP, and also, our consulting team for bicycle and pedestrian activity. The plan itself covers, the requirement is that it cover at minimum the urbanized area. What we did was we examined the entire county of Monroe County. We looked not only at the urbanized area, but we also looked at the planning area potentially for expansion within the next 20 years. The plan has a number, I'll go through a number very quickly here, the different chapters we have. Chapter 2, the guiding principles. These remain the same as what we had 4 years ago with the 2045 plan. In other words, those are safety, transportation equity, climate change, mobility and accessibility, transit, public transit, preservation and fiscal responsibility, and also community access. Safety is our overwhelming objective or goal, I should say, and all of these goals and objectives 100% correlate with what our public input was in the way of our surveys that we've had and also of our public meetings. The performance, we're required to have a performance-based planning program. This is a congressional mandate also, and the performance-based planning, the focus here is on safety, infrastructure condition, system reliability, freight movement and economic vitality, environmental sustainability, and reduce project delivery delays. In the performance measures, we have in here targets, and these targets are established again by Congress, but then the specific year of the targets, 2025 or 2024 over a 2-year period, and the measured units, these are established by the Indiana Department of Transportation. All of the urbanized areas, all 14 urbanized areas of the state of Indiana have adopted the same targets as the Indiana Department of Transportation. The Bloomington Transit also has a fiscal year 2025 performance measures. These are required by the Federal Transit Administration. I won't go into those, but you can see there that they're quite detailed. Chapter 4 of the plan outlines the existing conditions. The existing conditions include documenting the demographic and economic characteristics of Monroe County, transportation systems analysis, previous plans, air quality and climate change assessments. I won't go into the population forecasts. We went through a situation with the 2020 census where we had COVID-19 pandemic. Students were sent home 2 weeks before the census was taken in April of that year. So as a result, we lost something like 45,000 people that were not counted within Monroe County or the urbanized area. So it shows that we're flatlined more or less, but in reality, the reality is actually something different than that, with the student population backed up to 48,500, I believe it is, this year. The demographics in terms of the age, we show a much younger population, substantially younger population than the balance of Indiana. In terms of the cost of living as a percentage of the household budget in Monroe County, that'll be the next one down. Yeah, there you go. Cost of living as a percentage of household budget in Monroe County. Big issue here is housing costs are 25% of all household budgets. Transportation costs are approximately 26% of all the household budgets. Those are major drivers behind the cost of living here in Bloomington. The next one we have is the overall disadvantaged population component scores, percentile ranked. This scale is somewhat misleading in the sense that we're looking at the entire county, but actually there's a large proportion of Bloomington which meets disadvantaged in terms of lower to moderate income population or population without access to automobiles. Therefore, they're transit dependent, bicycle dependent, or walk dependent. The next one we have is bicycle and pedestrian crashes. Again, the scale on this, because we're showing it on a county level, we mapped all of, GIS mapped all of the 2019-2023 bicycle and pedestrian crashes. On the scale, you can see it's all on the center of downtown Bloomington and all around the campus itself. The next one with the BT routes, Bloomington Transit routes, we've got those mapped. Bloomington Transit recently went through a route optimization study and implementation. I believe the implementation began about 2 years ago, if I'm correct on that. The next thing we have is just showing air quality monitoring site. We only have a single site in Monroe County. This is at Benford Elementary School. This site measures PM 2.5 or particulate matter 2.5 microns. The standard, the national standard was 12 units microns per, 12 2.5 microns for a standard for a year. We are at 7. That standard was recently reduced to 10, and we're still within the standard. The air quality here is good, primarily because we're not a manufacturing area. Chapter 5 focuses on public and stakeholder involvement. You can see that we began in February of 2024 with an online survey. We had that survey open for quite a period of time. We actually had it open until July, followed by our first public meeting, number 1, in April of 2024. Focus groups in May of 2024. The focus groups focused on safety, multimodal accessibility, transit, and also disadvantaged populations in terms of income and in terms of availability of transportation options. Public meeting number 2 was here in this room in July of 2024. August of 2024, we had the survey closed. We kept it open an extra month just so that we obtained additional input from everyone after the last meeting, after the last public meeting. Then we had stakeholder conversations in October of 2024, and then our final public meeting with a draft presentation of the plan was the first week of December of 2024. The online survey results you can see here and also in the document. Actually, you may not be able to see it here given the scale, but in the document, we document the fact that we looked at daily commute and usage, the frequency of drivers, how often do you drive, how often do you walk, how often do you bike, how often do you use public transit, frequency of walkers, frequency of bikers, time spent commuting. You can see it's 15 to 30 minutes or less in this area. We're a compact urban form in terms of land use, and that's why you have a low commuting time. We also are relatively blessed with little congestion on the local routes. Miles of commuting, that's also documented in there, and the rating of current congestion, we only have 9% of the population said we had high congestion. The next slide, we looked at community engagement, focus groups. Again, the focus groups were active transportation, diversity, equity, inclusion. That is a word for low income, low to moderate income, or people who were transit dependent. And then we also had a focus group on public transportation. The diversity, equity, and inclusion also included individuals and population, representatives from the disadvantaged community, those with sight impairments, hearing impairments, or mobility impairments. They were all included in our process. The stakeholder meetings we had additionally were with Monroe County, the City of Bloomington, Bloomington Transit, and the Town of Ellettsville. Regional Goal Needs Assessment in Chapter 6. We looked at roadway active and active transportation needs, transit needs, using existing data from public input, and also to leverage existing conditions. Financial forecast. Financial forecast was based on the priorities established by the public. These were safety and security, facility maintenance and preservation, capacity expansion, new facilities. These didn't come from the staff. These came from the public and from the survey. With those, given those priorities, we looked at projected incomes, we looked at past receipts of federal funding, availability of federal funding currently and in the near term, and then we took a leap of faith, so to speak, after the year 2030 to the year 2050 in terms of what we anticipate our federal funding revenues being. We looked at the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is our current legislation that expires this calendar year. We also looked at funding provided and administered by the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, local public agencies, and the state of Indiana. On the far right-hand side there, we went through all the different funding categories and we looked at all of those. Chapter 8 on the recommendations. In the short-term recommendations, we identified the fact that transit operations, this is BT and rural transit, have operational needs of, in the near term, of $62.7 million. Transit capital needs currently at $26.5 million. That will probably increase as Bloomington Transit develops a brand new facility. Active transportation needs, $24.1 million. Safety needs, $6.3 million, and bridges, approximately $1 million. Statewide planning transportation projects, we also examined those in light of our own needs and state of Indiana's intermediate needs. This is from now until the year 2030, approximately $90.1 million in our area. This is our urbanized area itself. Our projection is that a majority of those funds will be spent on safety, $46 million. Air quality, that'll be statewide. Bridges, about $19 million, and other needs beyond that. In terms of the projects, we identified here what I would call the near-term needs. For the local projects. We didn't include this in this slide. We didn't include everything in here because that would be an exhaustive list. But this gives you an idea of exactly what we looked at. We then looked at public transit needs by rural transit, their operational needs, and then Bloomington Transit in terms of what they need for not only operations, fleet replacement, fleet maintenance, expansion of service for what I would call accessible vehicles, accessibility vehicles, major component repairs, a new green line design, which is currently in development, and then other needs. Indiana Department of Transportation intermediate needs, we identified all of those with the assistance of the Indiana Department of Transportation. The big one in here is State Road 45. where they'll be increasing the capacity and changing the geometrics of State Road 45 corridor from the bypass in an eastward direction, to Russell Road, I'm sorry. Then we're looking at deck overlays, State Road 446, hot mix asphalt overlay, and minor structural repairs that'll be done in the near term too. And then illustrative projects, we have what I would call an exhaustive list of illustrative projects. This isn't really a wish list. It's ones that were defined by Monroe County, by the city of Bloomington, town of Ellettsville, and Bloomington Transit and Rural Transit. But this includes what I would call multimodal accessibility corridor redesigns, College Mall Road, Covenanter, East 10th Street, 3rd Street to Atwater, East and West 4th Street, Rogers to Indiana, Rogers to Woodlawn, East Matlock. Another big one that's on here is the College and Walnut corridors. Those are all projected also to have intermediate needs from 2026 to 2030. And with that, I'll pause because I tried to keep it 8 to 10 minutes, so that way nobody would get antsy. And also, that was also a respect for your time. So Katie and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, and we'll take as long as it needs to answer your questions. Yes, Scott.
Is this document up for final approval? Is that what we're doing this afternoon?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Is this document up for final approval? Is that what we're doing this afternoon?
Yes. We had the draft plan presented to the committee several months ago, and that was in November, December. November, I believe it was, we presented the draft plan. Then we went to the public meeting on that for the final draft. And the final draft, we received the comments, review comments from Department of Transportation, Federal Highway, Federal Transit Administration, to make sure that we're adhering to the federal regulations for all of that. So yes, this is the final.
So go to page 34, and then on to page 35.
Okay.
And again, I'm not trying to get in the middle of approving
No,
the final document. These are just questions more than anything
Sure,
else.
sure, yeah.
Because I haven't had a chance to really go through this document before. I read it this weekend in
Oh,
full.
well, we've had it online publicly from the draft stage. We've had it online for multiple months.
I just wasn't aware. So on page 34, and I go to population trends,
Yes.
and in the last sentence of there, it says, current population projections indicate the 2030 population will be very similar to the total population today. And when I go to the next page, 35, this is an important point I'm trying to make because we hear about this in other forums, and that's population growth. And when I take a look at July 1st, 2023, and I look at the 2030 projection, is the column to the right of that the percentage of growth?
In relation to the Indiana's population,
Because it's actually decreasing instead of increasing.
yeah, it should be decreasing. Well,
And so
yeah,
and where I'm going with that, just let me just pause for a second, is that
Sure.
this is important when we talk about housing, and we're talking about it in other forums, and people are talking about the growth of our community and what the housing needs are. And if I read this right, we're really at zero growth. And we'll be at zero growth in 2030. And if I'm reading that wrong, please educate me.
no, you're reading it right. What the anomaly is here, that we're using the 2020 census data, and the 2020 census data was the anomaly, and that was the outlier, and we didn't have any way to guesstimate what that should have been, so what we did was we relied on the official numbers of what the Census Bureau published. In reality, the reality is we'll be growing, and we are growing, by virtue of looking around at all the development that's happened on the city level and on the county level. There's a huge demand for housing, workforce housing, and also student housing here in the community, and affordable housing too. That's the other issue. So what we had to do is we had to rely on the 2020 census data, and that's why it shows up the way it did.
And is that explained? Is that explained in that chart somewhere?
It's not explained in the chart, no.
Yeah, well, see, that's the disconnect.
Okay.
And see, people will take this document and they will use it as a reference point in other discussions. That's all, that's the only point I'm making. And you can do with it whatever you want with that information, but I just want to make sure I understood how the data was
Yeah.
being presented here.
Yeah, and like I said, it goes back to the anomaly of the 2020 population census, where we had the pandemic, the students went home, second week of March, and then April 1st, census came in, took the census, and we were automatically down 45,000 people. That was in Bloomington. I don't know about.
Well, I mean, if you
balance.
listen to BEDC and you listen to others, I mean, we hear all sorts of assessments on what we think population growth is going to look like. And in my own role on the Plan Commission, Monroe County Plan Commission, I'm trying to nail that number down so I have something factual to use as a reference point. That's why I asked the question.
And from our perspective, from the planning department, we project growth because there is a demand. Well, the student population is up. There's a demand for employment here, a big demand for employment. A lot of that demand for employment is being met with housing outside of Bloomington because the affordable housing, well, housing availability in general and that affordable housing. Also, in addition to that, those are the key issues that we have, that we face every day.
Next comment is on page 67.
Okay.
And again, this is for NDOT really, and Chris. And so is this a notional list of areas for long-term improvements? Or is it's not all inclusive, correct? I don't think it's all inclusive.
It doesn't seem all inclusive. I mean, we have various locations, smaller type maintenance type work that would be in there, but it's not shown.
What I would have added is the State Road 45, 10th Street from the bypass to Russell Road, because that's a pretty big dollar amount.
Make sure you talk into the mic since it's recorded.
Yeah.
What I would have added, if I would have read this document earlier, is that I would have suggested that you add 10th Street, State Road 45 from the bypass to Russell Road on that list, because it's a pretty big dollar amount.
Okay, which page was that? I'm sorry, which page was that?
You want me to repeat that? I can't hear it.
Okay. We can talk to you after the meeting and we can address that.
I can't hear him.
We can talk to you after the meeting and address that issue.
Did he say he could add it?
He said they could talk to you after the meeting to
Okay,
address
fine.
that.
Again, I'm not making a big deal about it, but
No, I know.
if it can be added, that would be relevant, I would say.
We had it identified in the short-term needs, 2026 to 2030, short-term, intermediate term needs, 2026 to 2030. That's identified as the big project by the Indiana Department of Transportation. That was illustrated in the tables that we had. I'm not familiar with that exact paragraph that's in there. That may have been because the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is intended to be what I would call a strategic document, and it doesn't go into specific detail about projects. It just identifies major needs and where we're at.
We can talk offline.
I'm sorry?
We can talk offline.
Okay, absolutely.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Other comments from the board? Jillian?
Yeah, I guess my questions are more about the next steps for this. A little bit about how the transportation plan gets applied, for whom does it offer guidance, what could we take away in terms of, as a representative of the Bloomington, the city plan commission, what might I take away from this? I mean, I can certainly see a lot of connections to goals that we're working on and things that our put before us in terms of proposals, but I just wonder kind of where this goes next and what we are to make of it.
Well, where it goes next is to Indianapolis on Tuesday of next week to the Indiana Department of Transportation, Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. And that's somewhat of a uncertain issue for ourselves because the rules have changed in terms of what Federal Highway, Federal Transit, and INDOT told us in December and what may come out in the next couple of months, or might be diametrically different. But we're going by what they told us to do. In terms of use for the local area for the respective plan commissions, and also for bicycle and pedestrian and all the other transportation commissions that we've got. What it does is it shows that the public wants an emphasis on safety. They want an emphasis on mobility. They want an emphasis on connectivity, safety, mobility, connectivity. And that safety is just paramount. I mean, there's nothing anywhere else close. The mobility is they want multimodal mobility. That's not only the automobile, but that's also public transit, that's paratransit, ADA, paratransit for that matter, bicycles, pedestrians, and also, the full range of multimodal capability. And then the investments that would be made then by particularly the city, because it's the compact urban form area. If you see the investments that City of Bloomington is looking at, they're looking at multimodal investments. Things like College and Walnut, making those multimodal, Dunn Street project, other projects like that. And then there's also an emphasis, continuing emphasis on crosswalk safety, downtown curb ramps, school zone safety, all of that. So safety, mobility, connectivity, those three issues, and then followed by preservation and maintenance. In other words, take the system that we have and take care of it, monitor it carefully, make sure that we're continually reinvesting in the existing system. In terms of added capacity, we don't see a need for added capacity in the near term or perhaps even in the long term, given added capacity projects that are underway right now. Added capacity in terms of Fullerton Pike corridor, in terms of the Vernal Pike extension. And then new facilities, we don't see a need for that anytime in the next 15, 20 years. Again, because we have those under construction right now with Vernal Pike, opening up that corridor to Interstate 69, which has been long planned, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, something like that. And then also with the extension of Vernal Pike down to Gates Drive. So the overwhelming response from the population of the survey, and this is consistent with what we had in with the 2045 plan 4 years ago, is that it's safety, mobility, connectivity, maintenance, and preservation, followed far distant by added capacity and new facilities. I hope that, and in that too is compact urban form in terms of land use. We do not see sprawl at all happening. The reason for that is, number one, you have karst topography, and number two, utility extensions. I don't foresee CBU, City of Bloomington Utilities, extending anywhere else in the near term or in the intermediate term. It's possible, but the likelihood is probably slim because the emphasis is on the existing system right now and providing that. And then also the sanitary district services, we don't see those expanding beyond where their current boundary is right now too, given the capital needs for doing something like that. So I hope that's an overextensive answer, but I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. It's very helpful. I mean, I just see a lot of connections between what we're talking about in Plan Commission and the work that we oversee and try and steward. And for instance, in here, if I just search this document, there are 27 mentions of sidewalks in some form, generally related to repairing or adding new sidewalks. And as we see projects come through in Plan Commission or approve considerations in the BZA as another committee that has a lot to do with this, there's often, discussion about sidewalks and either adding to or widening or expanding and making them more multimodal. And to me, that emphasizes the value. This report emphasizes the importance and value of putting in sidewalks where they don't currently exist to increase connectivity. So I just think there's a lot in this that can offer groups guidance, and it's great to see, and particularly from a public input standpoint. This is a reflection of public input, and I think that's really an important contribution of this report. So thank you for offering
Sure. And like I said, the survey results are consistent with the survey results that we had 4 years ago. People are saying the same thing, demanding the same thing, expecting the same thing. And we didn't explicitly say that transportation was tied to land use. We implicitly said it. We didn't want to beat you over the head or the public over the head about it's land use, it's land use, it's land use, because land use drives transportation generation. Trip generation drives employment, drives residential use, drives other commercial use, whatever. So by maintaining what I would call the compact urban form that we have in the urbanized area, we don't see, instead of growing out, we're growing up, and we're expanding options for people in terms of transportation, mobility, and all of that. So yeah, we don't have enough sidewalks. And some of the sidewalks we have need repair because they were done in the 1930s or the 1940s or even the 1950s. So yeah, I could go on and on and on here.
Thank you. And if I may, one more question. I think Monroe County Plan Commissioner Ferris mentioned or questioned about the population growth numbers, and I think it's an important point. And, I don't expect a plan document to have the numbers exactly right, but anytime we're putting numbers in print, I think there's the danger of them being used as, it's a trusted resource. So getting that right, I think, is important. I understand it may not be, it's not the goal of this is to state what the population growth is, but I guess one of the things I would want to know is there a trusted source of information about population growth that we should be referring to that might be more accurate than a printed document that was reliant on questionable data from 2020?
Yeah, our trusted source was the Census Bureau. And unfortunately, that's what we had to use. What we may do here is we may add a footnote. The staff may go in here and add a footnote to this about, hello, there's an exception here with the year 2020 census. And we'll work on a consultation on that.
Yeah, I just think it would be useful to have that kind of information, whether it's corrected in here, if that's possible, or if there are footnotes to add to this that might explain the discrepancy or the difficulty calculating it. I think that's useful information, but if we're beyond that point, I'm not going to quibble over it here. But I do think that this issue continues to get raised as, again, Plan Commissioner Ferris indicates, it gets used a lot, and I think if we're using the wrong numbers, it's not going to help us make the case.
And Katie and I couldn't agree with you more in that our funds are allocated, the funds that are allocated to us for transportation improvement projects are based on proportionality or per capita population for Group 2 cities. In relation to the balance of the state of Indiana, we decreased, so our proportional share for the next 8 years will remain artificially low because of the population of the census. And then also our planning funds that are given to us too are based on a per capita basis. And those are artificially low also. So we'll be paying the price, so to speak, for the next several years. Yeah, we will make a note of that. And how we do it, well, probably bold-faced italics or something. We'll do something. Yeah. Good points. Thank you very much, both of you.
Comments from the board members? Seeing none, do we have, Jody, you have a question? Oh. We would need a motion for this to be adopted.
We also have a resolution at the very end. Yeah. At the very end of the document, page 175 or 175.
For the adoption of it?
Yes,
okay.
please.
So it would include in the motion of adopting Resolution 2025-01, which is adoption of the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So that should be a part of the motion.
I'll motion that we adopt the Bloomington Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organizational Policy, the Bloomington Monroe County Metropolitan Plan Organization 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that the document be forwarded to all relevant public officials and government agencies and available on the NBC MPO website and for public inspection as per, yeah, is that enough?
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any comments from the board? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor for the adoption of the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the adoption of the resolution fiscal year 2025-01, do so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so very much from the heart of both Katie and myself.
Thank you for all the time and the hard work that was put into the document. I know I was involved in a lot of the meeting notices and such, but I know you two were behind it. And I want to thank City of Bloomington for doing collaborative effort with Monroe County. We shared the expense of that 50-50, so it worked out well for everybody. So thank you. Moving on to public comment on matters not included on the agenda. Moving on to communications from committee members on matters not included on the agenda. Either communications or topic suggestions for future agendas. Vice Chair.
The CAC currently has 6 members, most of which are well-experienced and long-lived in Bloomington. And we really need to increase our numbers, and we really need to increase the types of members that we have. So if all of you could just send Pat or Katie a suggestion for 1 or 2 people who might be appropriate for the CAC, we really would like to try to recruit more people and a somewhat different group of people than we have right now. Thank you.
Jody?
Just to get this out there, what types of people specifically should we look for?
Well, of course, people would be interested in actually doing work. It's actually not an intensive committee assignment. We have 1 meeting a month and there's some readings with it, pretty much like this, maybe even less. But we certainly would like to get younger people. And we really don't have anyone from the county on the CAC. So between those two, I think if we can get some of both of those, it would really help us to think that we're actually being the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Upcoming meetings. Technical Advisory Committee will meet February 26th at 10 a.m. This is also hybrid. Citizens Advisory Committee, February 26th at 5:30 and can be hybrid. And Policy Committee, March 14th, 2025 at 1:30 and that can also be attended hybrid. And next item is adjournment.